Good morning, we're here in Halifax. I really like it and it's not too cold. So it's a nice morning, quiet.
Halifax is the capital of the province of Nova Scotia. 400 years ago, the French arrived in this region, which was the land of the indigenous people of the Mi'kmaq. The French founded Acadie, but when the problem started with the English, Acadie ceded to England. The founding of Halifax in 1749 led to the exodus of part of the Acadian population to French territories. The Acadians who remained were perceived as a threat by the British authorities, who in 1755 began to systematically expel them. On my first day, I visited a couple of places to learn more about the history of Halifax. I started the day walking through the Halifax Harbor to go visit my first museum, the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. As it is a coastal city, it has a lot of history related to ships and the Atlantic Ocean. In high season, admission is $9.55. You can see the construction of small boats up to the age of steamboats. You'll discover the stories, events, and people that have come to define Nova Scotia and its relationship with the sea. You will learn about the tragic explosion in the port of Halifax. On December 6, 1917, the Mont Blanc ship, which contained a large quantity of explosive, was leaving in the direction of France when it collided with another ship and caused a disaster. It was the largest man-made explosion before the nuclear age. The city also played a key role with the sinking of the Titanic. The survivors of the Titanic all went to New York, but the dead bodies were brought here. You can visit the cemeteries where they are buried. The second place I visited was the Halifax Citadel. The price of admission for an adult is $12.50. And for those under 17, it is free because this site is part of Parks Canada. There's a lot to see, so you can easily stay 2 hours minimum. I arrived on time to see the rifle demonstration. There are also activities such as performance of the bagpipes and drums, sentry changes, the noon gun, and cannon firing demonstrations.
It's also part of Canada Park, so if you have the pass, you can come here.
There are many exhibit rooms about the First and Second World War. You will also learn about the Mi'kmaq until modern times. Another activity that I didn't want to do because I don't like scary movies is a night tour of the Citadel with a guide who tells haunted stories of the Halifax Citadel. In front of the Citadel, you will find the famous town clock. The last museum I visited on my first day was the Canadian Immigration Museum at Pier 21, where nearly 1 million immigrants landed in Canada from 1928 to 1971. Canada has a 400-year history of immigration. It is possible to trace your roots at the museum if your family arrived between 1865 and 1935 because they most likely arrived in Canada via Pier 21 in Halifax. For many, Halifax was not the final destination. From here, many continued their journey by train to the rest of Canada or to the United States. I love this museum. I did not expect all this interesting information. For me, it was also special because my own parents are immigrants and they're also part of this history of Canada. My parents had to flee El Salvador in the 80s because of the Civil War. On the second day, I visited the Africville Museum. As you can see, on this day, I was lucky with the weather, a sunny and pleasant day. By the way, on the other side of Halifax is the city of Dartmouth, which people have told me is nice to walk through the center.
We're not allowed to take pictures or videos, but the information was really interesting. It's really about the community of Africville. It's not about all the Afro communities in Canada. I thought it was a little bit about that, but no, it's really about what happened here in Africville, so in the north of Halifax.
For over 100 years, the African Nova Scotian community resided in Africville. Located on the northern shore of Halifax, the community was destroyed in the 1960s to make way for industrial development. The inhabitants were forcibly evicted and relocated. This neighborhood was neglected by the authorities for a long time. The community wanted to commemorate this event by rebuilding the church that was destroyed by the city office and make it a museum that tells their story. In 2010, the people of Africville finally received an apology for the loss of their community from the city of Halifax. Since the weather was nice, I decided to walk along the Halifax harbor. After my walk around the port, I went to the Central Library. You can go for a coffee on the top floor and have a good view of the city. On the third day, I went to the island of George. At that time, it was only available to visit the island on the weekend. The price is $26.75 for the entrance and the ferry you take to go to the island. The labyrinth of batteries and forts on George Island were part of the Halifax Defence Complex, which protected one of the main naval bases of the British Empire in the 18th and 19th century. On July 28, 1755, the Nova Scotia Council made the decision to expel the Acadian population from the colony. For the next decade, George Island served as a prison for hundreds of Acadians at one time. The representatives of the Acadian population, having pleaded their cause before the council in July 1755, were the first prisoners. The facilities on the island were inadequate and the detention conditions appalling. Deportation policy ends in 1764. Discover the underground complex beneath Fort Charlotte. This maze of cold brick tunnels once housed ammunition for the fort's powerful gun in bomb-proof security. You can only access the tunnels with a guide. Every 20 minutes, a new tour starts.
So you can see we still have the original sort of pulley system that was used during the 1800s to put this gun into place. And it would have moved around.
On my fourth day, I decided to have a more relaxing day, so I decided to visit the Public Gardens Park. Everything I visited in Halifax is central, and I did it on foot, except for the Africville Museum. There are beaches, towns, or other parks that you can visit near Halifax, but you need a car or go on a tour bus. On my last day, I took a bus to Prince Edward Island, another province of Canada. I took the Maritime bus service. Here, I leave you with a view of downtown Halifax. In the next video, my adventure through Eastern Canada continues on Prince Edward Island for 4 days, and at the same time, I'm going to visit a friend who recently moved there. Until next time!